Committee members, if I might just have your attention, I've just been informed that the minister is just running a little bit behind. I'm sure he'll accommodate us for the full hour when he arrives. So I'm just going to allow time. This is the appointed time to start the meeting, but I'm going to allow a bit of time for the minister to arrive. I know he's been detained, but he'll be here very shortly. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. This is meeting number 57 of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today, we're here to review the main estimates for 2015-16, and we're pleased to have with us, appearing for the first time as the Minister to the Committee, the Honourable Pierre Poilievre, the Minister of Employment and Social Development. Welcome, Minister, to your first official committee meeting. We also welcome, along with the Minister, people who've been here before, and we welcome you back. From the Department of Employment and Social Development, we have Deputy Minister Mr. Ian Shugart. Welcome. Senior Associate Deputy Minister and Chief Operating Officer at Service Canada, Ms. Louise Livonian, and Mr. Alan Seguin, the Chief Financial Officer. Also joining us from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, we have Mr. Evan Siddall, President and Chief Executive Officer. Minister, because you're just a touch late, I guaranteed the members that you would perhaps tag that extra 5 minutes onto your stay. So we have you for a full hour. Took the liberty to do that, so we'll begin the meeting by proceeding with your comments and then move it through into members' questions. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to officials from my department and Mr. Siddell from the corporation for being here as well to provide parliamentarians with answers about the estimates. Of course, this is a vast job for us to do. This department is the largest in dollar terms, about $112 billion. It touches on everything from old age security, guaranteed income security, Canada pension plan, employment insurance, and job training, and of course hundreds of billions of dollars in mortgage insurance. So we have a vast array of matters that will come before the House in the estimates for authorization. I always like to simplify, though, the purpose of this department. It really does come down to jobs, families, and communities, the three pillars of good social policy. I've always believed that the best anti-poverty plan is a good job. The best social safety net is a strong family. And for those who, through no fault of their own, do not have a job or whose families struggle, we have a third pillar called community. So let's start with jobs. Our jobs plan is based on the 3 T's: trade, training, and tax cuts. Trade is self-evident, and it's not directly under the purview of this department. So while I support the Canada-EU trade, the trade agreement with South Korea, and the trade agreements we've signed with more than roughly 40 countries total, I won't spend a lot of time talking about them. Training, that definitely is a big part of what we do. Our approach at employment and social development has been to, over the last several years, especially under the leadership of my predecessor, Jason Kenney, has been to reorient our training programs towards matching Canadians with jobs that actually exist. For too long, we told our young people that there was only one way for them to succeed, and that was to get a job after going to university, wearing dress shoes in a white-collar position. We now know that those are great, but there are 1 million skilled positions that are needed, many of them in blue-collar trades, where we don't need dress shoes, we need hard hats and work boots. And that is why we have reoriented our program to renew respect and value for the skilled trades. We believe that trades deserve the same respect as professions, colleges and polytechnics the same respect as universities, and blue collars the same respect as white collars. And so we created the Canada Apprenticeship Grant, which helps with the cost of first initiating and then concluding an apprenticeship. We supplemented that recently, in fact just this year, with the Canada Apprenticeship Loan, a $4,000 loan that helps students with the in-classroom costs of being an apprentice. Already we have, I think, over 10,000 young people who have taken advantage of this interest-free loan. Finally, the Prime Minister recently announced that the Canada Student Grant, which had only been available to programs of a duration of 60 weeks or more, will now be available for more vocational-style training of a duration of as little as 34 weeks. That, of course, opens up that grant to a vastly broader array of training opportunities for our young people. Finally, we had something called the Labour Market Agreement, with which all of you are familiar. That gave $500 million a year in training dollars to our provinces. But we found, unfortunately, it wasn't matching people with jobs that actually existed. So we've transformed that into the Canada Job Grant, whereby an employer pays 1/3 of the cost, and the Government of Canada pays the other 2/3 of the cost of training an employee for either a promotion or a new job within the work setting. That means the employer gets a tailor-made employee, and the employee gets a guarantee that their training will actually lead to a job. And we've had many successes with this already. So that is a small sample of the changes we're making to our training program. Finally, tax cuts. In my department, we are strongly supportive of measures to reduce the costs on employers. And that's why I'm pleased to confirm that in 2017, we will reduce employment insurance payroll taxes by 21%. That'll make it much less expensive for employers to hire. And when they do, their employees will pay less payroll tax as a result of this change. More money in the hands of people who work and more money in the hands of those who would hire them. We just announced in our recent budget plans to cut small business taxes from 11 to 9%. This is the largest small business tax cut in 25 years. The CFIB confirms this will help small enterprises hire more people, build their payroll, and strengthen our economy. Mr. Speaker, that brings me to my next point, which is families. We believe that the child care resources the government has should go directly to the child care experts, and those are the 8 million people we call mom and dad. And I see that Mr. Cuzner already knew what that line was, so I'm very impressed that he's coming around to our point of view. We hope that he'll convince his leader to one day to do the same. So we have canceled bureaucracies erected by previous governments on the child care front and replaced them with direct cash payments to parents that they can spend on anything they believe appropriate. Now, I've asked my department to look into the impact this has had on child poverty, and we have some good news in this area, colleagues. The universal child care benefit, the original $1,200 payment, has already lifted 41,000 children out of poverty and into the middle class. The methodology of this calculation is simple. We looked at families who would be below the low-income cutoff line if that benefit did not exist, but are above it because of its existence. And there are 41,000 kids based on the original program. That does not include the recent increases to the universal child care benefit announced in the previous fall economic update. That increase will mean $2,000 for every child under 6, $720 for kids 6 through 17. It augments the family tax cut or income splitting and a whole variety of other pro-family, low-tax measures instituted by our government. The overall approach here is to put money directly in the pockets of parents so that they can lift their kids up and strengthen their families, and it's working. UNICEF looked at child poverty in this country. They looked at child poverty all around the world, and what they found was during the Great Global Recession, while you'd expect children would suffer the most, in Canada the opposite happened. We had 108,000 kids lifted out of poverty between 2009 and 2011, and UNICEF specifically said that was the result of government policies to put money directly in the hands of moms and dads. Finally, community. All of us probably can think of great philanthropic community leaders, people who have gone out into the world and done great things and want to give back. Often when they make these impressive donations to build hospital wings or university libraries or expand food bank operations, they don't have that money sitting under their bed. They have it invested in a small business, in real estate, or in shares. And you all know what happens when they sell those assets. They pay taxes. Now, that never hurt the philanthropists. They were planning to give that money away regardless. Actually, it hurt the charity. It was a tax on charities. I'm pleased to share with this committee a recent announcement by our government that any sale of assets for the express purpose of donating to a nonprofit will be exempt of all capital gains tax going forward. That means that those donations will go 100% to the charities to which they were destined rather than to the government and to the taxman. Another inspiring area where communities have stepped up is in helping our new Canadians achieve their full potential. We have a problem and an opportunity in this country. Here's the problem. Despite the fact that we have 24,000 skilled tradespeople and professionals who immigrate to Canada every year, only about 26% of immigrants work in the field for which they were trained. 36% of immigrants report difficulty getting their credentials recognized in Canada. Despite the fact that immigrants are more likely, vastly more likely, to have PhDs and master's degrees, they have more difficulty putting those credentials to work in the Canadian economy. Now, one of the reasons is that in the licensed professions and trades, it can often be difficult to get a license to practice, to get credentials recognized. And it's very costly. Many newcomers have no credit history or collateral, so they can't get a loan in order to go and take the training, testing, and time off work necessary to get their credentials recognized. So a group of business leaders in Calgary came up with a really innovative idea. They said, if they can't get a bank loan, a traditional bank loan, we will sign loan guarantees for them, so the banks can be sure that the money will be repaid. And a group called the Immigrant Access Fund administered the initiative, helped these newcomers with charting a course to credentialization, planning their studies, and preparing for a job find after the credentialization was finalized. And they took small loans, about $7,000 a year. Our department, under the leadership of Jason Kenney, funded the administration at the outset of this. And then we provided a little bit of extra loan capital and loan guarantees to support it as well. And we're starting to get the results of this pilot project. Roughly 1,800 immigrants took these loans. On average, they were about $7,000. So far, the default rate is well under 3%. Employment is up by 47%. At one of the sites where these loans were delivered, incomes have doubled from the time that the participants undertook their activities, from before they took the loan until after they paid it back. And there's been a very large increase in licensing in the original field. We are still waiting for additional information and data to come, but I am almost certain and very confident in saying the very small amount of money that we put into this will be paid back many, many times over through the increased taxes that will result from the growing incomes of participants in the program. So we announced in the recent budget that we would transform this pilot project into a full-blown program. The terms of that program have not yet been established. We're not prepared to announce how many loans will be available or how exactly they will be delivered, but I can tell you that we are going to keep the budget commitment to institute a microloan program to help newcomers get fully credentialed in their fields and working in high-paying jobs so that they can fulfill the outstanding potential that they bring here to Canada.
Minister, if you could just quickly wrap up.
I will wrap up. Thank you, Chair. So our agenda is jobs, families, and communities. That's what we do, and we will keep doing it with the help of extraordinary public servants and the support, hopefully, of Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Now we'll move into 5-minute rounds of questioning, and starting with Mr. Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Minister, to the committee. Congratulations on your inaugural appearance. Minister, I'm looking at the youth unemployment strategy in the 2013-14 Departmental Performance Report, and I want to ask about youth unemployment in this country, which you touched on. As you know, it's approximately twice the national average, about 14%. Some think it's higher than that because that's just a reported number. We know that young people are hurting and parents are worried. Yet, there was lapsed spending. $40 million that were targeted to go towards alleviating youth unemployment did not go towards helping Canada's young people find jobs last year. And on top of that, there are now cuts planned to the youth employment strategy, nearly $20 million by 2018. Further, we note that dozens of organizations waited months to hear about skills-linked funding this government either did not dole out or doled out very late. So, Minister, in the face of a 14% youth unemployment rate, Why did you leave $40 million unspent to address this issue, and why future cuts?
Thank you very much for your question. I think we need to put the issue of lapse funding into its proper context. It is the regular practice of governments to spend underneath the budget that Parliament authorizes for them. And there's a good 800-year-old reason for that, which is that departments are not meant to spend what Parliament has not approved, and it's unwise to spend right up to the limit for fear of going over it. So it is good, prudent financial management to come in under budget and to leave a buffer between that which you have approved and that which we spend. As for youth unemployment, the historical reality is there has always been a gap between rates of youth unemployment and unemployment among the general population. That being said, there's some very positive developments as it relates to the well-being, financial well-being of our young people. For one, student loan debt has declined by 10% in real terms. We have ended the liberal tax on scholarships and provided tax credits for textbooks. We've also created, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the apprenticeship grants and loans. We put out 500,000 of these grants. They're worth about $4,000 a piece, and they will help young people fill them, for example, the more than 300,000 construction jobs that will go wanting over the next 7 years. So we do have a low tax plan to help young people get employed and earning good incomes in high demand jobs.
Thank you. I'm going to turn from young people to seniors and income security for seniors. And of course, as you know, Minister, demographically Canada is aging, and we're all more concerned about this as we go forward. Now, there's no magic to pensions. If folks want stable, sufficient income in retirement, then it requires people to put away money in a disciplined way in a stable, secure fund for a long period of time. Now, the Canada Pension Plan is Canada's largest pension fund. It is the most stable pension fund. It is the most diversified pension fund. It is completely portable across the country. It is jointly funded between employers and employees. It is the cheapest pension fund for employers in the country because they have no administrative costs to actuaries, lawyers, or otherwise. And it has guaranteed benefits. We know that it was designed specifically to provide 25% of income replacement in retirement. And we also know that well over 50% of working Canadians no longer have workplace pensions. That's a change from how it was 20 or 30 years ago when the 25% was figured out. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Minister, why not implement the NDP's plan to gradually and prudently phase in small increases to the Canada Pension Plan contribution rate to gradually result in a doubling of pension benefits, to recognize the fact that more seniors will need to rely on Canada Pension Plan 10, 20, 30 years out? What's wrong with that idea?
It's a tax increase.
It's retirement funding.
I was just speaking to a small businessman before I came into this room, and his business offers matching RRSP contributions to his employees. He says he would have to cancel that if he's proactively brought up the provincial Liberal proposal to increase payroll taxes on his company. He said he would have to cancel matching RRSP contributions for his employees if they brought in this payroll tax increase on his company. Other businesses have told the CFIB that they would have to lay people off in order to mitigate the costs that such a payroll tax would impose upon them. I know earlier today, yesterday, the Liberal leader said that he supports, quote, a mandatory expansion of the CPP of the type that Kathleen Wynne put forward in Ontario. That plan would lead to a $1,000 tax increase for an individual earning only $60,000 a year. And another $1,000 for the small business that employs that worker. Higher taxes are not the solution. We prefer low tax options, and that is exactly what we have provided.
Minister, can I ask, are you opposed to employers contributing to
Mr. Davies, your time is finished. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, actually, I'm going to allow some latitude with going over the 5 minutes, but we were well over the 5 minutes in that case. On to Mr. Butt for 5 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Minister and officials. Thank you all for joining us today to discuss the main estimates. Minister, one of the most significant programs that your department is responsible for, of course, is the employment insurance system. And, you know, as a local member of Parliament, obviously I'm helping constituents out from time to time with these issues. And there's absolutely universal agreement that, thank God, Canada has such a program that helps people who have lost their jobs due to no fault of their own, and in fact helps parents, mothers, because we have maternity benefits and parental benefits. I was just reading an article last week. There's a big debate now in the United States because they don't have maternal and parental benefits in their employment insurance or social security system. We have those great things in Canada. So I want to ask you a few things about our EI system. Obviously Canadians pay into the EI system through payroll taxes, and these premiums fund the administration of EI. Obviously their employers make a contribution to the EI system as well. And it's a great social safety net program that we have, and we all, I think we all political parties, we cherish the EI system and the important role that it plays. I understand that Service Canada recently brought on additional staff to assist in the processing of EI claims. As a result, can you confirm that Canadians can expect to have their EI claims processed within the 28-day service window? Service Canada's standard, as I understand, is 80% of claims processed within the 28 days. Are we currently meeting that standard? Are we making sure that I can certainly tell you in my office that I'm getting very, very few constituents coming in indicating they are having issues with the processing of their EI claims, which tells me it must be working, because otherwise they'd be in my office. So can you give us an update on that? Where are we on the service standards? And where are we generally on the strength of this very important program for Canadians?
Well, the anecdotal evidence you observed in your riding is a microcosm of what has happened across the country because of the very good management of public servants and very wise decisions they have made to allocate the right resources towards this service standard. I can confirm that over 80% of eligible applicants are receiving payment in under 28 days. So that is the 80-28 commitment with which you are all familiar, and I can confirm that it is now being met. Did you want to add anything to that? Okay.
Yeah, and one of the things I do want to do is, and I think all the members will agree, is I certainly want to compliment the excellent work that the Service Canada office in Mississauga that me and my staff deal with are doing. I mean, they are really being extremely helpful, I find, on some of these cases, because some of them are complicated, right? And how we get to insurable earning, you know, insurable hours and those kinds of things. Sometimes those issues are a little bit complicated, but I've certainly found, it's been my experience anyway, that the ability to work with the individuals in the Mississauga Service Canada office has been outstanding. So please take that comment back to your staff from me and my office anyway, that I found it to be quite good. Obviously, Minister, when we are processing EI claims, people are obviously concerned that things will be dealt with more efficiently. I'm assuming more and more of these are being done electronically. They're able to be processed fairly quickly in that manner. Is that indeed the case? Or if people are still doing kind of the walk-in traffic thing, what is happening in these Service Canada offices across the country that will give us, as members of Parliament, certainly a better feeling that there's someone there, there's a live body there that's actually providing a level of service to an individual who's simply dropping by to drop off that EI claim?
Other than to say that I know that at least 2/3 of claims are now fully or partially automated. I don't have anything to add to it, but I think my officials could offer you more technical information on how we're processing these.
The impact of the digital age has two main impacts, and Louise may want to elaborate on this in more detailed questions if you wish. But the first is to turn increasingly to the automating the processing of the claims rather than having that done manually by individuals. And the second, of course, is encouraging people to make the contact through digital means. And both of those things have been trending for some time and continue. That said, Service Canada is committed to being available through the mechanism, whether it's call centers or digital approaches or direct person-to-person contact. It is the citizen that makes that decision, typically based on their need and their circumstances.
Thank you for that answer. Now we move on to Mr. Kuzner. 5 minutes, sir.
Thanks very much, Minister, for being here and the officials. Minister, you're quite confident that in 80% of the cases, people are receiving EI benefits within 28 days.
Eligible claimants, yes.
I think what you're looking at is notice of payment. Is that what you're referring to, notice of payment?
If you want to add to that, Louise.
They are put in pay, so they're paid within 28 days. That's the term. They, from the date of their application, and put into pay, so they're receiving funds within 28 days.
So they're receiving funds in 28 days.
We're actually a little bit over 80% now.
How many are being turned back? Recent statistics show that of the 2.8 million claims that you would have processed last year, 700,000 would have gone beyond the 28 days. Is that fact? Is that a fact?
I don't have the exact number as to how many would have gone beyond that.
But a quarter of the claims would have gone past 28 days, and on average, those people are waiting 7 weeks.
Yeah. So
are you pleased with that figure?
So the speed of pay in the past has not been as good. That is true, but we are now definitively over 80%. So the proportion.
That's on the ones that are being paid. So you've changed the rules. You've changed the game here. Okay, you know, because let's talk about those that are waiting 7 weeks. That in 28 days they get a notice saying that they will not be paid, and it's tough to put groceries in the fridge with a notice that says no, you're not going to get paid. So, are you comfortable with that fact? That over 700,000 Canadians that apply for EI benefits are going past, they're averaging 7 weeks before they receive payment?
I can't confirm that number right now, but I could get back to you as to whether that's correct or not.
And beyond that, so the stress level in these kitchens, the stress level with these Canadians now, then they phone the call center. And you know, with the call center, before your government cut 600 jobs, closed 100 EI processing centers, which the minister quoted will make it faster, more efficient, and more effective service. You were dealing with the call center calls. The service level was 95% of the calls were being answered in 3 minutes. You weren't hitting that number, so you cut it down to 80% of the calls being answered in 3 minutes. Weren't hitting that. You cut it down last year, 80% of the calls were being answered in 10 minutes. I'm starting to pick up a bit of a trend here. Are you not yourself, Minister? Because if you're not hitting the numbers, you're changing the rules, and you're lowering the standards. Or is that acceptable to you?
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So, I mean, Service Canada definitively tries to meet the service standards that are set out there, and we try and do that in the most efficient and effective way possible.
By lowering the standards? Is that acceptable, Minister? Obviously, you're not aware of that, but you are now.
By meeting the standards.
But we see the pattern of lowering the standards. And Minister, you have to know, these are our most vulnerable. These are our most vulnerable Canadians that are without work now, and they need that support. So, you know, now that you're aware, I would just hope that you'd be seized with this issue and make sure that we put the resources in there that we need. Just, I've got a couple minutes left. Just
Mr.
going back
Chairman,
to a
Mr.
question
Chairman, sorry
by
to
my...
interrupt.
Just-
but,
Minister, yes?
We didn't get a chance to respond to the
Yes,
comment.
please, yes.
Okay, please respond, yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, you can rest assured that when an individual calls with a dire needs issue, that we address that right away.
That's when they get through, because 54% of the time they don't get through. The call is dropped.
They can go into a Service Canada centre as well. There's means of getting in touch with us. When we get directly, they can come to me. If there's a dire needs case, we address
I'll make sure
that.
we let that single mum from New Waterford know that she can
good.
pop by
It's
your
no
office.
problem. I get a lot.
That's great. But
45 seconds.
thanks very much. Just the youth employment strategy. In 2005-06, the youth employment strategy served 113,000 youth. That's currently, the most recent stats say that last year it was 54,000. So a loss of 50,000 young people are having access to that program. And then we're projecting, as was mentioned earlier, we're projecting another $20 million cut in that program. So where is the help for, where are the young Canadians getting the support from that program?
Well, as I think I mentioned at the outset, there are a variety of ways we help young people get into jobs. Training is foremost among them. I want to emphasize the importance of the Canada Apprenticeship Grant. For too long, our suite of policies ignored training for the trades. That grant has now gone to over 300,000 young people. 500,000 grants to 300,000 young people to help them go and get certified and get their journeyman or journeywoman tickets and work in high-demand jobs. We're also targeting resources to help young people transition from one career to another. For example, there are 9,000 working-age veterans who are released from the military every year. We want to ensure that they, many of them young, get recognized by the system for the skills that they accumulated while they were in the forces, so that they are automatically qualified to work in high-demand jobs. I was just at BCIT at Polytechnic in British Columbia last week, where they have a program specifically designed to help hundreds of young veterans get course credit for many of the skills that they built while they were in the forces, so that they can then convert those skills into the civilian marketplace. We announced funding for BCIT to expand this program to 7 other sites across the country, so that it will be available to any veteran who ultimately wants it. So that's just one example of how we're using training to bridge and build skills for in-demand jobs.
Thank you, Minister.
Thanks.
Way over on that one, but I'll allow that latitude for other members as well, if it's required. Mr. Mays.
Thank you, Minister, for being here, and your officials. One of the things that I just want to talk about is the universal child care benefit. When I was younger, there was a baby bonus, and I always remember my mother putting that away for a savings for my post-secondary education for our and my siblings. And I was just wondering, if parents had the substance that they didn't need to use that money right away, and they decided to put it away, could they just save that $1,920 for 6 years and then put it in a registered educational savings plan, and that's bumped up by 20% by the Government of Canada, and with 5% return, you're getting about $2,400 a year, multiplied by 6, and then you get into the $720 a year with the same. We're up to about $25,000. So there's no strings attached. That can be done if the parents can afford to put that away. The question is do you foresee that is going to actually influence the number of student loans that are really needed? Because we're going to see this money that's going to be available to parents to put away for the future of their children's education?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. In fact, I was recently at the Fred Barrett Arena in the south end of town here, and I met Trevor, who is a resident of Osgood, just south of Parliament Hill. And he has 5 kids, all of them over the age of 6, and he'll be getting $720 a year for each and every one of them. And he told me his plan was to put that money in registered education savings plans for each one of them. And that will take an enormous bite out of the cost of post-secondary education for those 5 kids who might not otherwise have an opportunity to go and learn. The point in this story is that every family is different. A one-size-fits-all government knows best program that ignores 90% of kids would not help people like Trevor. For one, government daycares would not serve him because his kids are all too old for daycare, whereas the universal child care benefit is universal. So everybody under 18 is eligible, and their parents can invest that money in the ways that will deliver the best result for their kids. We believe in choice. We believe in moms and dads.
We could have almost called that Universal Child Care and Benefit Savings Plan. Just what is the cost of that? Like, there's going to be a number of children that are parents that are going to receive this, and you know, there's going to be an increase in cost. But overall, what is the cost, and can you extrapolate that as far as, you know, there's a benefit when you give somebody a check. Most often they spend it, and then they pay GST, and they put money into the economy, and the money comes back. So is there any a forecast about you know, the fact of what the real cost is to taxpayers?
So the original universal child care benefit, I think, cost around $1.9 billion, and the expanded is now $4.9 billion in the 2015-16 fiscal year.
And that's a lot cheaper than a universal child care institutionalized type of program where it could be up to $15 billion by having.
Well, if you believe the supporters of a national government-run daycare program, they say it would cost about 1% of GDP. I think that's probably low. It probably costs a lot more than that. But we have an economy that's coming on, you know, $2 trillion. So that's almost, you know, just under $20 billion a year for a national government-run daycare program. And so, I mean, I don't know where you'd get that kind of money. You'd have to massively increase taxes, run enormous deficits, and probably cut other programs to find the money. And then after all of that, 90% of Canadians don't want that type of daycare for their kids. They prefer other options, and it would do nothing for older kids. So that's why I think Canadians consistently reject that approach.
So this is more of a direct benefit.
That's right. You cut out all of the administrative and bureaucratic costs by sending the money directly to the end user, moms and dads.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now that completes the first round of questioning. We'll move on to the second round, and Mr. Nichols.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, following Mr. Davies and Mr. Kuzner's questions regarding the youth employment strategy, I have a few additional questions. The department says something that's a bit contradictory to what you say. You've talked about lapsed funding. I'd like to address the inefficiency in the management of the distribution of funding and the rollout of programs. I'll quote the department that said, the expiry of funds is due to delays in implementation of programs due to career goals. We've seen a number of problems related to the execution of this program, notably in Quebec. and my colleague from St. Lambert mentioned it a number of times to your predecessor, Mr. Kenny. So my first question, can you tell us what is the origin of the delays in the implementation of projects in the skills area? Mr. Chair, the program in question seeks to match young people to jobs by providing a bridge between their current skills and those they will need in the future. I would be very willing to work with Quebec members to identify ways to improve the administration of that. But if there are technical problems you'd like us to talk about, you can identify them. Well, you know as well as I do that the needs of employers are time sensitive. So if program rollout is ineffective and people looking for jobs, young people, if there isn't a match between programs and funding, there are gaps in the program for young people. But I'll go on to my next question. The $32 million that lapsed, were they reallocated, and if so, for what purpose? $12 million will be reprofiled from this year to next year. So we'll still be in the program, but it will be pushed back till next year? Yes. How do you plan to ensure that the funds for 2015-2016 are used as efficiently and effectively as possible for the youth employment strategy? Would you like to know how we can ensure, how will you improve the effectiveness of the program? That's the challenge with any program at any time. Mr. Chair, we work every day tirelessly to improve the effectiveness of our programs. I think the results we've accomplished to date with investments made are generally impressive. And if there are improvements my officials would like to discuss, I will give them the floor to do so. Before doing so, Mr. Chair, could I specify, because I'd like to talk about results and shed some lights for Canadians, because they're not really familiar with the youth employment strategy. So what programs are currently funded by the 3 pillars of the youth employment strategy? How will they be improved? Quite simply, Minister, we will make our best effort based on the observations of people who've made comments on administration over the past year. There are 3 pillars for this program: career focus, which is based on employers; Skills Link, which is a program for young people who are facing a number of obstacles; and the Summer Jobs program that involves all MPs in selecting programs. Those are the 3 pillars of that strategy.
Mentioned under Skills Link, we've served in 2013-14. We served 12,390 youth, 1,477 returned to school, almost 6,000 were employed or self-employed. Career Focus results for the same year saw 3,726 youth served, 402 returned to school, 1,342 were employed or self-employed. And then, of course, there's the Canada Summer Jobs Program, with which you're very familiar, which serves annually about 40,000 students, give or take, depending on rates of minimum wage in the various jurisdictions. But that's an overview of the results. We could talk, I'm sure, offline about other particular projects within these programs to assess their efficacy, but that's an overview.
Thank you, Minister. Now we move on to Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the Minister and the officials for being here this afternoon. Minister, it's been great to work with you over the last several months as you've taken on this gigantic portfolio, and it's great to see the energy and the enthusiasms you put behind your work every day. Now, I'm going to focus the first part of my questions around the Social Security Tribunal. You know, we've heard a lot in the House, we've heard a lot in other places about the Social Security Tribunal and the legacy backlog. And I know your predecessor worked very hard on this issue, as have you. Can you give us an update on just where we are in progressing and dealing with that legacy backlog that we were left with?
Yes, we considered the backlog to be unacceptable. My predecessor came up with a common sense plan to address that backlog. The plan, to recap, was for officials at the department to triage the outstanding cases that were awaiting appeal to the general and appeal divisions, and to settle as many as humanly possible so that they did not actually have to go before the tribunals at all. I'm happy to report that that the department has done an exceptional job in this practice. They are settling cases at a very rapid rate, and the team that some in the media call it the spike unit. I'm not sure that's the proper technical term, but they've done an extraordinary job of serving Canadians and resolving as many of these outstanding cases as possible. I'm happy to report that they will have done all of the triage work on those cases by about mid-August, which was the original plan. Of course, there are some cases we can't settle because our officials deem they are not appropriate for settlement and that they do need to be put before the tribunal for deliberation. But I can tell you that the department's work is going extremely well, and it will be completed on schedule.
Great. And the SST chair, the current chair, has also mentioned that she expects to be able to handle 500 cases per month. Can you extrapolate on that, Minister, about the 500 cases per month that the SST will be able to take on?
The SST did indicate that it would do the chair of the SST indicated that they would do 500 cases per month. That work is done at an arm's length, and we will we continue to encourage the rapid resolution of cases before the tribunals. But what I can report is that within ESDC, our officials are shouldering the responsibilities that they took on. They're completing the caseload at the pace that they promised, and they will be finished their work on schedule.
Great. That's good news, Mr. Minister. I appreciate that. I'm going to switch gears now. In the budget this year, we made an expansion of the EI Compassionate Care benefit. Could you elaborate on the positive benefit that will give to families across the country?
I mentioned that the three pillars of our agenda are jobs, families, and communities. This is really on the second. When people are critically ill, often they do have to rely on our hospitals, sometimes regrettably even palliative care. But more than anything, they want to be close to their families. And the previous employment insurance program for compassionate care allowed someone to take up to 6 weeks off during the critical illness of an immediate family member. We announced in budget 2015 that under the leadership of Prime Minister Harper, we will extend compassionate care for 6 months so that people can be with their loved ones in this extremely difficult and painful time.
Do you have any idea how many families that this will benefit in the country? Is there any calculation of that?
I don't have those numbers, but I'm sure we can get back to you, Mr. Secretary. 6,000?
It's about 6,900 is our estimate.
Wow, that's impressive. How much time do I have left? One more question?
Very quick.
Minister, I want to just going back to the EI numbers and the progress that we've made. It wasn't too long ago we were hearing a lot of complaints in MPs' offices across the country about the rate that people were able to receive their EI benefits, far below the 80% that we were looking to get within 28 days. It's great news that we've been able to now achieve that benchmark goal. Can you talk about some of the steps that were put in place to try to make that difference for Canadians looking to receive their EI benefits?
Absolutely. Before I do, I think the Deputy just wanted to provide a bit more information on your previous question, and then we'll...
Chair, it occurs to me that I may have answered a little bit the wrong question. We estimate that there will be about 6,900 beneficiaries. That would be an increase of about 900 from the current take-up. I thought I should clarify.
Thank you.
Yes, the department, frankly, under the leadership of my predecessor, made a decision to hire about 400 additional processing employees to help deal with the challenge of shortening the wait time, and they have allocated resources, provided good, solid training to these new workers, and the result is we have now achieved the goal of providing payment to eligible applicants, 80% of eligible applicants within 28 days.
Thank you. Madam Davies.
Thank you, Minister and officials, for coming here today. Minister, you've pointed out, of course, that this is the largest federal department, and it's. I wish we had an hour for every major program that you have just to go through it. So it's obviously a very kind of generalist situation that we're facing with 1 hour with you. But I just wanted to pick up from. You said at the beginning that obviously jobs are a key priority, and certainly I think there would be agreement on that. My colleague has pointed out that $40 million of allocated funds was unspent in youth employment programs. You look at something like the adult learning, literacy, essential skills, that was underspent by 31%, which is really quite shocking given that the OECD says that 49% of adult Canadians fall below high school equivalency. So obviously that's a very important program in terms of job readiness. You spoke a little bit about the foreign credentials. That program's been underspent by $30 million over 5 years, and you talked about the pilot project, which sounds well and good, but it seems to me that there's a pattern here. Now, your response was, well, you know, every department likes to come in under budget, and that's good, but we're talking about millions and millions of dollars here that haven't been spent in the way they were meant to be spent to help people who really need it. So I really don't feel satisfied by your answer. And I think it requires an explanation as to why, for example, with youth employment, money that's meant to go to such a critical area, or adult literacy or foreign credentials, isn't actually being delivered. Either the departments are deliberately, you know, overestimating what they need, or the whole thing's a bit of a farce. I mean, you know, these estimates are meant to be there as estimates. They're meant to be there. The allocations are meant to be real. So I wonder if you could give us a better explanation as to why so much allocation is unspent when there is such a high need, whether it's youth, adult literacy, or whether it's new Canadians.
Well, I guess we just have different definitions of success. Some believe that you define success by how quickly and abundantly you can shovel money out the door. Others define
But
success
these are your
by...
allocations we're talking about, not our allocations. This is what Parliament agreed to based on what your department said needed to be provided for that program. So,
Right.
you know, we're talking about, no one's talking about shoveling money out the door. It's based on your estimates.
Well, those estimates are and have been, for the history of parliamentary democracy, ceilings and not floors. We don't wake up at the end of the fiscal year and say, oh my goodness, we're under budget, we better shovel out the last $10 or $15 million of allocated money, regardless of whether there are good projects available and ready to receive that money.
Getting out of the basement.
We invest in initiatives that generate results for Canadians. I'll give you an example. You mentioned foreign credential recognition. We just announced funding for the Medical Council to eliminate one of its evaluating exams and put its regime for accrediting foreign trained doctors online. That will permit applicants for immigration to this country to begin and in many cases actually complete their credentialization to become a medical doctor before they even arrive in Canada, so that they will be eligible to immediately start a residency or maybe even go into a full practice when they get here. This is a revolutionary concept, completely different than the approach of the previous government, which was just to allow people to come here and then to give them the heartbreaking news upon arrival that they would not be allowed to work in the profession for which they spent a decade of their life training.
Minister, I can
These
tell
are real
you...
results, but that's the point. Here's the distinction. We funded that not so that we could put $6 million out the door, but so that we could get results for our healthcare system, our job market, and newcomers. Not the purpose here is to deliver a result, not just to spend money.
No, that's not what the debate about. It is about delivering results, and it's about providing the programs where they're needed. I can tell you probably in every riding, particularly my riding, youth unemployment is a serious issue. There are all kinds of organizations that could have used the youth employment program funds for summer jobs, right? But they, you know, the allocations, whatever they are, they get turned, and yet we find out there's $40 million that's been unspent. So it's not a matter of shoveling money out the door. It's a matter of using the dollars for what they were intended for, particularly when there's such a high need. And I feel that there's just a huge gap in terms of the explanation here, and, you know, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to Canadians.
Well, most Canadians would say that when you come in under budget that you've succeeded. That most Canadians would say that you focus on achieving results rather than just pushing money out the door. I know that you say that you have people who need jobs in your riding. I have no doubt of that. We all do. The number one source of new jobs is actually small business. We've just announced we're reducing small business taxes from 11 to 9%. I raise this because you cannot reduce taxes for anyone if you're spending too much. And every day I hear opposition MPs stand up in the House of Commons and demand more spending on every program imaginable, money that we don't have, often for things we don't need, and that will drive up taxes on everybody, especially our job creators. That's the last thing people looking for jobs in your riding and mine need to hear.
Thank you very much. Minister, that brings us close to the time that I had asked for, which is a complete hour, and wondering, just before we part, we do have a couple of minutes, whether you have any further comments just to close out the 2 minutes we have left.
Yes, this is my first time addressing this committee. It is a daunting task to assume leadership of a department this large and with this much responsibility. And I want to say a very heartfelt thank you to the public servants, both at CMHC and at ESDC. Also, they're not here, but the National Capital Commission, for which I'm also responsible, and at PCO, who have done an extraordinary amount of work to help me to get through this very difficult transition to a very big portfolio. We have some exceptional public servants in this country. I think all of you and all of us are very well served, regardless of our partisan affiliations by them. So I just hope that everyone appreciates the work that these fine people do, and I applaud them for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Minister. Now, I'll just allude to one comment you made during your initial presentation, and you referred to me as the Speaker, and I'll take that as a true compliment of perhaps what might be down the road. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I concur on your evaluation of the officials you brought along with you, and we will have the officials stay for a second hour, so we'll just take a quick recess while the Minister leaves. Welcome back to the second hour of today's consideration of the main estimates, 2015-16. We have with us for the second hour the departmental officials. I've introduced several of them with the Minister. I'll introduce two who have joined. Benoit Long, the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister of Processing and Payment Services Branch, Service Canada, and Brian Naish, the Chief Financial Officer. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir. Thank you. We'll start this half of the meeting with any of the officials here who wish to make comments and give you up to, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes, depending on which of you, how many of you would like to speak. If you'd care not to speak, that's totally understood as well, and we'll move right into questioning. So do any of you wish to make comments before we begin the afternoon session?
No, I think we're in the committee's hands, Chair. I may take the liberty from time to time as we get into the different areas to invite other colleagues from the department to come forward and converse with officials. We actually have a number of new colleagues in the department that the committee members will not have met before, so as that occurs, I'll take the liberty of introducing them if I may.
Thank you, Mr. Shugart. I appreciate that. So let's move into right into our rounds of questioning. I'll keep the same order as we had in the first hour unless members wish to change that. So we'll start with Mr. Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the officials for being here. I want to now turn to the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. That's page 65 of Plans and Priorities. And I have a number of questions. I want to focus first on the Live-In Caregiver Program. Now, I'm sure, as you know, the Live-In Caregiver Program is a very important program for Canadian families and businesses. It's an important source of caregivers for families for their children. It's an important source of caregivers for aging parents, particularly those with dementia and other disabilities, and for people with disabilities. Since the changes to the LIC program, though, the statistics are, I guess in a word, startling. In December 2014, there was an 85% rejection rate for LIC applications from families across Canada. In January 2015, there was a 93% refusal rate. In February 2015, there was a 91% rejection rate. In March 2015, there was an 86% rejection rate. I have families coming to my office who run businesses who are saying they need caregivers to take care of their children so that they can actually devote their time to their business, so that they can actually into the workforce. And they're telling me they have to pay $1,000 to the government. That's not refundable. They are told by the government caregivers will be available. They cross every T and dot every I and comply with every requirement of the program, and then they get their application rejected. They want me to ask you, why is there such an appalling rejection rate of valid applications? And they want me to ask you, is the government really trying to kill the LIC program, but they just don't have the political courage to come out and say so?
Chair, I'm going to ask Paul Thompson, who is the ADM working most closely with Citizenship and Immigration on the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. Paul, do you want to
Sure, just to make a couple of comments. First of all, we're still very much in a transition with respect to the caregiver program, implementing some very significant changes. I think the processing results that we're seeing are very much a reflection of the transition and a pretty significant change in the eligibility parameters for the program. So those are still flowing through the system. A lot of applications are being received that aren't consistent with the new program, such as some of the main elements of no longer having this mandatory requirement for live-in, to be a live-in caregiver. It's now a more broadly based caregiver program. There are differences in the advertising requirements that are being introduced. The wage policy has also changed significantly to reflect the prevailing wage. So these significant changes were introduced, and we're still in the process of seeing applicants adjusting to them and hoping to get more completed applications that are fully aligned with the new program.
So just so I understand then, your answer as to why we have an average rejection rate of 90% of applications across the country from December to March is because the applications are flawed?
They're not in line with the new requirements of the program.
Well, I do have people come into my office who are literate professionals who have hired professionals in many cases to prepare their applications, who are well aware of the new program requirements, and they come to my office with flawless applications, and they're getting what they're showing me simply indecipherable rejections that don't make sense to them. These are not cases of just flawed applications. They're getting solid perfectly done applications rejected. Is there any answer to that, or are they wrong?
We are still just several months into the new policy framework for this, so I think we're confident to see that we'll see a pretty significant change as these new program parameters take root. That there's more awareness amongst clients, and we'll see those numbers change dramatically in the coming months. We're pretty confident
well, we'll be watching carefully and hope that's the case. Again, under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, can you explain the decision to create exemptions for temporary workers in Alberta in the face of the April 1st deadline, for Yellowknife by lifting the hiring ban completely there, and relaxing rules for universities around transition plans? Why create rules if exemptions flow so freely?
This program, and frankly, Chair and members of the committee, it has been a challenging issue of public policy to achieve the right kind of balance between proven need and undue reliance on temporary foreign workers when the Canadian labour market can provide the workers. In the case of universities, and I'm going to ask Paul to comment on the specific geographic locations, the essence of much of university recruitment is indeed to deliberately search for the best talent available in the world. And so the exemption was applied to the specific requirement in that high-skilled category of having detailed transition plans to a Canadian workforce. We want to understand what is going on, what the trends are, be able to identify any inappropriate reliance on the TFW program. But it was because of the essential objectives of recruiting people from abroad that it made no sense in those particular cases to transition to a Canadian workforce. These institutions were deliberately blind as to the country of origin. They wanted the best experts in those areas, researchers and scholars and so on. So that explains the exemption and the approach in that regard. With respect to the geographic areas where you've got sometimes highly localized labour market conditions, we've done a lot of analysis on that, and Paul can comment.
You know, I'm just concerned.
I'm way over on your time. I'm going to allow Mr. Thompson to respond, but there's no time for your intervention. Mr. Thompson.
Sure. Just to speak to the other two examples, as part of the policy changes announced by the government last June, there was a general prohibition on low-wage temporary foreign workers in certain occupations in the accommodation and food services sector and retail sector. There was, at the same time, as the Deputy Minister has noted, an opportunity to reflect specific economic circumstances in microeconomies, places where there might be a severe labour market shortage in an otherwise area of higher unemployment, and that case was made by the government of the Northwest Territories with respect to Yellowknife, and it was accepted as a legitimate exemption based on available labour market information. The second example is with respect to the agreement with Alberta. There is a change made with respect to the entire program, that any temporary foreign worker who has received a nomination for permanent residence doesn't get included in the cap that has been introduced for temporary foreign workers. In the case of Alberta, there was a backlog in the processing of provincial nominee program, so there was a flexibility extended for people that were in that backlog, so that where there was an intent to nominate. So it was an accommodation for the specific circumstances in
Thank you.
the province of Alberta.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ballin, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and let me add my voice of welcome to our panel, taking time out of your busy day to share some information with us. We certainly appreciate it. When I look back on what's happened in Economic Action Plan 2015, which is also in action today as we speak, the thing that I found very interesting was the change in students being able to work while they're on a student loan program to help augment that loan and help with the financial side of going to school. got kind of a ball of wax here with a bunch of different questions hanging out of the ball. Let us just see what we can do with it. On average, how much more money will students be able to keep from their work?
We actually eliminate that requirement.
Very good.
So
When was that eliminated?
that was a budget 2015
at budget
decision. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
I've got that
I'm sure the students appreciate that.
I know. The point here is to foster attachment to the labor force. The assumption is, of course, that there may be small amounts of income that a student may earn, but if we can encourage that attachment to the labor force while they're in study, then that is good for their long-term prospects in the labor market. Sure. I got that right about the elimination, didn't I?
Okay. What would you say, how much more money will students be able to keep? 50%, 75%, 100%? You're saying that it's going to be 100%?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I guess, would you think that this is kind of a, I think this is what is happening question. We don't have any hard facts, but I'm asking really, what is it that you feel will help students move into co-op learning programs and internships with the new student loan program? Is that going to be something that happens or no?
Well, I think the first requirement for that kind of uptake is employers who are prepared to make that kind of opportunity available, and our ministers have been advocating that in the employer community. I think the logic of this, and I'm going to ask my colleague Gail Johnson, who has joined us in the last year, is the ADM of our learning branch, to comment further. I think what the government has done is remove as an issue, a financial issue at all, this requirement, and for some that would have constituted a barrier, and it leaves the way free to accept employment on a large scale. For example, to get a running start on paying down student loans, or to have less reliance on student loans because it's out of income. There is probably a point at which we want students to be learning and not wearing themselves to the bone by compromising their studies by having to work too hard. But that's, of course, an individual choice. So I think we can anticipate, although I don't think we've modeled this in any detail. It's hard to know with any certainty, but the logic of the policy would remove those financial considerations as a barrier, and in many cases will facilitate their income and therefore their savings potential down the road. Is there anything you would want to add to that?
The Deputy Minister is absolutely correct. And what this does is it removes any disincentives to work while the student is in study. And what that means is that students have the opportunity to participate in co-op programs, for example, thus making them better prepared for the labor market.
Good.
Your 5 minutes. 5 minutes is up.
Game over?
It is. It goes fast, doesn't it?
Chair.
May I make a suggestion?
Gail Johnson, who holds a PhD in higher learning.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Might I make a suggestion? If you're here in support and we have enough seats, if you're called up to support, maybe stay at the table. maybe in that way I could invite Mr. Thompson back to the table. I know we have additional chairs up here, and that way we don't have to do the shuffling in between that was a bit of a distraction, and we'll just populate the chairs until we have no more, and if you wish to call them up here, Mr. Sugar, you're very welcome to do that. Just feels a little more hospitable that way. Okay. Now we move on to Mr. Cuzner.
Because we want to be hospitable.
Of course we do.
Of course.
Always.
How many additional people have we hired in the EI call centers in the last year?
Over 138.
Pardon me?
Over 138.
Over 100. Okay, that's great. Because the number that I cited, 54% of calls being dropped, that was a 2013 number. It's actually gone down to 33%, so there's been improvement. Yes. So I think the case can be made that, you know, additional staff is not a bad thing for efficiency within the EI call processing centers and the call centers. But two questions I want to get at here. You know, we've brought the standards down year after year from 95% in 3 minutes, 80% in 3 minutes, 80% in 10 minutes. Are we hitting that number?
I think, Chair, that we would want to clarify, and I will invite Benoit Long, another of our new recruits in the department, to expand on this, but we have not, in fact, lowered the standard. I just want to clarify that, but Benoit can elaborate.
So our goal throughout the year has been to meet our standard vis-a-vis the answering of our calls and the calls that we get. There's a number of factors that drive the
standard is? The standard is what?
80% at 10 minutes.
80% in 10 minutes. Okay, are you hitting that?
Not yet, no.
No, you're at 45%?
A little higher than that.
A little higher than that. So do you anticipate lowering the standard again so that it could be attainable?
No, we don't.
Okay.
And there's a number of factors that
okay,
drive
I've only got 5 minutes, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
On getting back to what the minister said about 80% payment, was he referring to speed of payment? Is that because when Finley was here and she was the minister, she said she couldn't tell us because the speed of payment was still notification of non-payment and notification of payment, and she couldn't extract those two numbers from that number.
So Benoit can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 80%, it's actually 81.4% now.
Correct.
And it's from application to being put in pay. Am I saying that right? Being put in pay.
Okay, because the definition of speed of payment, I'm confused, because the definition says percentage of EI benefit payments or non-payment notifications issued within 28 days of filing.
Standard applies to both, i.e. the number of people who will be put in pay within or less than 28 days, as well as the notification that is sent to claimants who are not eligible that they will not receive a payment.
So they're in that 80%.
Correct.
So people aren't getting checks. They're getting notice that they aren't getting a check.
But they're getting notice that they're not eligible, so they would not get a check unless their appeal is successful.
So yeah, but they're not getting a check, and the minister said quite clearly that people were being paid 80% of the time. So I think that's why we have to get back to 700,000 applicants. 700,000 applicants are waiting over the average is 7 weeks.
I think the minister was saying those eligible are receiving their payment at that standard. Those eligible are receiving their payment.
I clearly use the word eligible. I heard him say eligible. That's the correct way to say it.
Yeah. I guess.
Anyway, factually, Mr. Cuzner, that's the standard, that's the definition, and that's the current performance. Okay, so what are we doing about the others that are in? Because the others that are in, what I understand is if it's a MIC on the ROE and it's a MAC on the application, if there's anything slight,
that gets kicked out, and then they're not being processed. Like, that's going 7 weeks, that's going 8 weeks, that's going 9 weeks. So 700,000 Canadians are wrestling with that. 700,000 households are wrestling with that.
So it is the nature of the program that within the first few weeks, if eligibility cannot be established or a claimant is not eligible for whatever reason, then an adjudication or an assessment has to be made. So that will take some time longer. And that varies across many, many claimants. And so, in fact, as you quoted earlier, the 700,000 figure is actually 688,000.
Oh, that's much better.
No, it's not because it's better. It's simply because quite a number of Canadians who are claiming may very well have to submit more information, clarify information that's been given, and they've been kicked out of the automated process.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that simply means, Mr. Cousineau, that they will be paid. It's a matter of longer, but they are eligible.
That's the end of the time for that round of questioning. Now we move on to Mr. Aglinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for our guests this afternoon. In Economic Action Plan 2015, I believe you renewed the Working Well on Claim pilot program that was implemented a few years ago. This removes the disincentive to accept available work while on an EI claim. Does the department have any initial evidence to suggest that this incentive has encouraged workers to work more while on claims? Have you got any results on that?
We do. We do have data that suggests that claimants working 2 or 4 days per week while on claim has increased from 43 to 50%. Another way of looking at this is to measure the employment income that is earned while they are on claim, and that also has increased. So there is evidence that, and it's perhaps a matter of judgment. We think that those increases are material. The income earned, for example, has gone from around 46% to just under 53%, so 46 to 53. That's not enormous, but it's significant for those workers. The reason for the extension is that there is still mystery attached to some of the regional implications of that. And so the government wanted to explore those regional dynamics a little bit more closely, and for that reason extended the pilot, working while on claim.
Okay, thank you. How much time we got? Lots of time?
Yep.
Budget 2015 reaffirms our federal government's commitment and implementation of the significant reforms to temporary foreign workers last year. And a lot of the reform on the temporary foreign workers was to strengthen program compliance and regimes wanted to be implemented. How much money has been allocated to reforming the temporary foreign worker program to date, roughly?
I'll ask you to.
Council Land has the spending figures. There was a. Is it in our supplementary estimates for a previous fiscal year? But there's. Do you want to speak to that aspect of it?
For the previous fiscal year, 14-15, there was $22 million put aside as we ramp up the program. Going into 15-16, we are now putting forward the budget requirements for the amounts into 15-16 and 16-17. So we haven't finalized those numbers just yet, but they will be in supplementary estimates for 15-16.
Do you have any anticipated outcomes that you're looking at from this?
In terms of the program, yeah, I'll have to ask my colleague Paul to.
So there's been a gradual expansion over the years of the authorities of our enforcement personnel with respect to the temporary foreign worker program. So there's expanded authority now with respect to conducting on-site visits, authorities to compel documents, and a broader scope of offences that are being pursued. In addition, the government has proposed a range of increases in terms of administrative and monetary penalties. There was a discussion paper that was put out last fall and with the government stated intention of bringing forward new regulations to toughen the penalties essentially for wrongdoing in the program with the appropriate gradations that correspond to the degree of severity of the offence. So those are some of the examples that we're rolling out as part of the reforms.
So this money that Mr. Seguin mentioned, how much of that is allocated towards the implementing and strengthening of the compliance region, or is that part of that money? Is that all combined together in the program?
The amount that Alain referred to out of last year's estimate was a global amount. I don't have the specific portion that was attached to compliance. It's one of two main capacities. There's the capacity to actually conduct the labour market impact assessment, and the compliance activities. Those are the two main functions as part of the increased spending. I just don't have the specific breakdown. And as Alain noted, we're in the process of confirming our numbers for the current fiscal year.
So I take it from this that we are increasing our compliance on the temporary foreign worker program.
We are indeed. An additional element is the government's decision to post the names of non-compliant employers. Excellent. Where there's been a suspension of the or revocation rather of the labour market impact assessment, and that's been implemented, and there are employer names that are now attached to that list.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Davies.
We had a little bit of discussion earlier about childcare, and the minister threw out the number of $20 billion a year for what he said was a government-run national childcare plan. I'm not sure what he meant by government-run. You could have various interpretations of that, but I'm just wondering whether or not the department has actually done any costing of what the NDP plan that's being proposed.
I could clarify, Mr. Chair, but I don't believe, to my knowledge, that we have costed that plan. I don't think we have.
Okay, so we don't really know where this $20 billion, what that refers to then.
I'm afraid you've lost me on the specific number. But
I might try to clarify for you, because my recollection of the testimony from the minister is that he talked about 1% of GDP as the estimated cost of the program that you're referring to. So that's extrapolate. Then he went on to extrapolate it for the $20 million number. Now, again, we can check the records.
From.
Yeah. The 1% is how he got to that number.
So we don't know how he arrived at the 1%. So anyway, we're just curious to know whether or not you'd costed the plan that the NDP had come up with, because I just don't know where this $20 billion comes from. I just want to switch gears because I know that we have CMHC here, and being from Vancouver, obviously one of the hot spots in the country around affordable housing. We recently had a rally in Vancouver organized by a young woman. First time, totally non-political. She organized a rally. 300 people showed up. A couple days' notice, and she developed a hashtag. Her first tweet ever, she put in a news article, "I don't have $1 million," meaning that's what you need to have to basically have home ownership in Vancouver. And I just relate this back to you because certainly in Vancouver, the housing crisis, the affordability crisis, whether it's for rental, whether it's for home ownership, whether it's lack of opportunities around co-ops or the whole operating agreements. I remember the days when CMHC was a great provider of grants and funds to develop not-for-profit housing. We can all think of the veterans housing that was built after World War II. That's, I think, probably when CMHC began. Now, it seems to be really nothing more than a mortgage insurer. In fact, that's how the minister introduced you. So what kind of future do we have in terms of CMHC as being part of the solution and moving away from just being a mortgage insurer? I mean, we have a crisis in this country in affordable housing, and CMHC used to play a very important role. I know that from being a municipal councillor for 5 terms and how important CMHC was. That's all gone now.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, on behalf of the government, CMHC continues to provide $2 billion per year in assisted housing programs. That includes $1.7 billion pursuant to existing historic agreements and about $300 million per year in new funding, most of which is provided in partnership with the provinces under the investment in affordable housing with matching dollars. And that will be about an additional $2 billion over the 2008 to 2015 period, as I recall.
I know that the figure of 1.7 billion gets thrown around a lot, and I've had it in letters, but to be clear, those are existing long-term commitments as a result of mortgages that came about, 25 years ago or whenever it was. So that's something that you can sort of see in its own separate way. But in terms of new contributions, say for the provision of co-op housing, which is a very affordable program and has been very successful in Canada, we don't see anything from CMHC. I mean, is there anything new that's on the horizon?
The investment in affordable housing was first introduced in the Economic Action Plan of 2000, and you can help me.
In 2008.
8-9, and then renewed. Thank you, and then renewed again and extended in 2013, as I recall. In addition to that, CMHC continues to provide research and support for assisted housing providers through our Affordable Housing Center as they prepare to transition from the ending of some of those operating agreements that you referred to.
Do you think it's important to have a long-term sustainability for housing affordability coming from CMHC through government funds to ensure that continuity and the seed money that's needed to the provinces and so on?
We continue to provide policy advice to the government and ideas on additional programs and current programs, and as I said, we do help these housing providers transition to an era when those operating agreements expire.
Thank you. That's over the 5 minutes and the end of that round. Now we move on to Mr. Butt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to continue to follow on the housing theme, and I appreciate Mr. Siddell being here on behalf of CMHC and sharing some time with the committee this afternoon. Is it not correct that in the case of most, if not all, of the operating agreements with the federal cooperative housing, that the operating subsidy expires at the same time the mortgage on the property is paid off? And in a lot of cases, and I know 2 co-ops in my riding, are actually going to be net ahead of the game because their mortgage is actually more than the subsidy they're getting from CMHC. So is that not correct? Is that not how these agreements are structured? That when the mortgage is done, the subsidy ends?
That is exactly how most of those agreements are structured. That's right.
Right. So it is true, it's a fair statement to say that there are many co-ops across the country where their monthly mortgage payments to CMHC are actually higher than the actual subsidy they're getting to subsidize some of the affordable housing units within the complex.
Their mortgage, can you just repeat the question if you don't mind?
Well, if their mortgage is $10,000 a month, all right, that they're paying on the mortgage on the property, because they've had a 35-year mortgage on the property, most of them were 35-year mortgages, as I understand, it's $10,000 a month, but maybe they're only getting $6,000 a month in subsidy to help subsidize the operation of the property and providing some of the units. They're actually $4,000 a month ahead when the agreement ends.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true and in how many cases it's true. I may have an answer here. The answer is yes, that is true. Thank you to my colleagues.
Yeah. I'm not saying that's the case for all of them.
No.
So some of them are going to be net, and some of them there may be some issues. But as I understand
some of them, I gather,
most of them are at least going to net out even at the end of the operating agreements.
That's right.
Right. The subsidy and the mortgage are essentially the same.
That's right.
Okay, and they're now mortgage-free. Can you just give us some general comments on the housing market in general? What you're sensing, what CMHC is sort of sensing. We get comments all the time. You know, there's a bubble, it's going to burst. There's this. People are buying houses they can't afford. Can you give me just a bit of your expertise and knowledge on that? And then the supplementary question to that would be, what is sort of the solvency and status of the mortgage insurance business that you are doing? Are you still feeling fairly bullish about how it's working? I certainly know from the investment property side where many apartment buildings are being bought and sold, and there's CMHC mortgage insurance that's backing up those mortgages. That industry is very pleased with that program. They give me excellent feedback all the time. So just take a few minutes and give us your sense on a couple of those things. And again, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure to be here. And so, Mr. Chair, two-part question, one on the status of the housing market and then the second on the solvency of our mortgage loan insurance business. The first with respect to the housing market, we endorse comments that in general Canadian housing markets are modestly overvalued. We're not dispirited by that. Markets go up, markets go down. Sometimes they're a little overvalued, sometimes they're a little undervalued. And our assessment in general is that markets are a touch overvalued. We last year published for the first time, and republished, as we will do quarterly last week, something called our House Price Analysis and Assessment Framework, which uses, based on economic background, I won't get into the technicalities of it because it will bore me and you even more, I'm sure, using different measures of the market and the performance in the market, the status of individual housing markets by cities, 12 different cities in the country. And in general, after that work, which was quite extensive, we pronounced a robust housing market that we think will evolve naturally. As I said, markets are a little overvalued, they're a little undervalued. There were a couple we picked up as being of higher risk. Those were Regina, Winnipeg, Montreal. Regina and Winnipeg we thought were at high risk primarily because of overbuilding and oversupply in those markets. And Montreal and Quebec City at modest risk in part because of their price levels and some overbuilding as well, in particular in the condo sector, which is also a challenge in Toronto. In general, we believe the markets will evolve naturally, as markets do from time to time, and that's what we project for the future year. We also, while we project a moderation in house prices, we do expect a potential decline in house prices in Alberta as a result of the oil price adjustment, and in particular the unemployment that would result from that. I'll just add briefly, with respect to the solvency of our business in the mortgage loan insurance side, so CMHC returned $2.6 billion of profit to the government in the past year. It's a very, very profitable business. That's all of our business, but the majority of that is our mortgage loan insurance business. We retain $16.5 billion worth of capital in that business, which is almost double the regulatory minimum we think that's needed from a solvency point of view.
Okay. We're out of time on that round of questioning. Members, committee members, we have to deal with the voting on the estimates as we've been dealing with today. It's part of the business of dealing with the estimates as we have today. I know there's a desire perhaps to have one quick question from in the next round, so I'm going to allow Mr. Davies, if you have one quick question, maybe limited to 2 minutes, I'll call it after 2 minutes, and then back to Mr. Mays.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've got two that I want to ask, so I'll have to decide. I guess I'll come back to this. In total, we have $40 million in the estimates that was not spent for youth. We have 31% that was underspent for adult literacy. 25% was underspent for people with disabilities. And I think the minister mentioned the reason for this was the Magna Carta. That doesn't seem right to me, and I'm going to put it to you that what was the real reason that this money wasn't spent was because there was an order from the minister to the department to balance the budget, whatever the cost, even if that meant not spending monies that had been authorized by Parliament to be spent on these targets. Is that the reason the money wasn't spent?
I'll just remind the committee, as usual, when we have government officials here, there's some questions that obviously you're bound to answer because they deal directly with the subject matter. But if this is something outside of your what you feel is your mandate, then you're not obligated to answer it.
We do not work, Mr. Chair, on the basis of overall funding approaches to grants and contribution programs. These programs are administered program by program on that basis alone. There, in fact, are many reasons, particularly when you look at the span of 4 or 5 fiscal years, as I think some of those numbers do, which account for variations year to year in spending, including under spending. The minister referred to the results that are looked for. There is nothing actually automatic about these programs, the applications. They are assessed. There have been from time to time administrative difficulties, which our work on modernizing the administration of grants and contributions we believe will help and facilitate. But these are done on an individual program basis, and the decision making is based on a number of factors, including the particular policy objectives that are sought for each of those programs. Some are subject to changes in terms and conditions and policies, which will on occasion affect the level of take-up from the community. So it's very difficult to give a comprehensive answer, but I can tell the honourable member through you, Chair, that we administer these on the basis of each individual program and not under any particular fiscal objective.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Mays.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. I noticed here with regards to the loan default for student loans, and it says that the department will review policies and legislation to reduce student loan default and increase recoveries for loans. Is that like an ongoing thing? Because that was one of the things that was actually printed, what was written off as far as loan default on student loans in the National Post. And my son read it, and he kind of ragged on me a little bit because he paid his way through. And you're letting people get student loans, and they're not repaying them. So, just wondering, I know that it's only 13%, but still, is there anything you've got in the works to try to get a better accountability for those students that get loans?
Yeah, Chair, this is an entirely legitimate preoccupation of members of Parliament and of the department. When these loans are entered into, they are obligations upon the student who's taken the loan, and we treat them as such. That said, there is, members will understand, a wide variety of circumstances. There is the provision, an acknowledgement of that through the Rehabilitation Assistance Program. Is that what it's? Repayment Assistance Program, where the status of the loan is rehabilitated, and there are provisions made to facilitate that. There are also, as the Chief Financial Officer could regale us, write-offs in any given fiscal year. We take no pleasure from those write-offs. We're answerable for them, and we have measures underway with the Revenue Agency to work together to try and reduce those outstanding loans, and we will continue with those efforts in the days and years ahead. Chair, I wonder if I could, in the absence of Mr. Kusner, just make a small correction. This was, there are a lot of numbers that we've heard and given today. The reference was made to the number of hires in the call centres. My colleagues just confirmed that was 101, not 138, as we indicated. I'd like the record to show that.
Thank you. Duly noted. Okay, that wraps up our time with the government officials, and on behalf of committee members, I want to thank you for all being here. We do have to conduct about 5 minutes of business, and we only have 5 minutes, so if you could make your exit fairly prompt and quietly, I'd appreciate that. Thanks very much for being here, and thank you for your professionalism and all that you do. Committee members, we're seized with now going through a series of votes on the estimates and giving your chair direction as to how to report them. So I'm going to ask 6 different questions very quickly and ask for your response in terms of a yay or nay on the votes. So the first vote is shall vote 1 under Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation carry? On division? On division. Shall vote 1 under Canada Centre for Occupational Health and Safety carry? On division. Shall votes 1 and 5 under Employment and Social Development carry? On division. Shall votes 1 and 5 under National Capital Commission carry? On division. And the last one, shall I report the main estimates 2015 to 2016 to the House?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to debate that. Not teasing.
Thank you very much on that fast voting, and with that, the meeting is adjourned.